Hello and welcome to the Church of Basketball. In the first part of this video, we talked about how Mike D'Antoni, along with the Phoenix Suns, brought a European style of spacing and high ball screen offense to the NBA. In response, perhaps after being run close a few times and then eventually swept out of the playoffs by the Suns in 2010, coach Gregg Popovich and the San Antonio Spurs began to design their own interpretation of a more spread out offensive philosophy, where the pick and roll was used as a key to unlock scoring opportunities and punish scrambling defenses with high IQ decision making, often with multiple phases of attack. Surely not by coincidence, they'd started to build their roster through the recruitment of international talent, including former Sun Boris Diaw and another legendary coach from the Italian league, Ettore Messina, as a lead assistant. After observing where Phoenix might have fallen short, they implemented a more defense-focused, efficient and less hectic, in other words, a more Spurs-ish version of the blueprint the Suns had laid down. And the outcome is seen by many people in the game as the pinnacle of team-first, unselfish NBA basketball, resulting in back-to-back finals appearances, a Coach of the Year award for Popovich, and a championship. The beautiful game Spurs. And while this new version of San Antonio was adding more weight to their ongoing dynasty, the league as a whole was continuing to evolve in other ways. One of the more significant consequences of the Malice in the Palace was that the NBA began adjusting its rules to reduce the amount of physical play, especially as that particular incident had been initiated by a confrontation under the basket. In the 80s and 90s, NBA basketball had been characterized by a high level of bodily contact, especially when going to the rim. So in response, the league decided to greatly enhance the rules around permitted contact when players were driving to the basket or handling the ball, including removing the hand check rule, where defenders could physically prevent ball handlers from going where they wanted to go. This newfound freedom of movement, combined with the extra space created by a new style of play, meant getting into the lane was easier, pulling in help defenders and leaving much bigger gaps for kickouts to spot up threes. These rule changes also coincided with the advancement and more widespread use of basketball analytics, which particularly emphasized that taking a 3 instead of a long-range 2 was mathematically more beneficial because, for example, and try to keep up here, shooting 10 long-range 2s and making 4 would generate 8 points, but taking a step back and shooting 10 3s, making 4 would generate 12 points. And it could be said that the adoption of such arithmetic was evidenced in the fact that the Gregg Popovich coached San Antonio Spurs, who'd had a long-running reputation for being a slow it down, twin towers, throw it inside type of team, won their rings in 2014 by shooting the most ever threes in finals history up to that point. even if the coach himself wasn't particularly happy about it. The success of this system, especially in terms of integrating a more international style of play, the new rules, and the emergence of a more numbers-driven approach, indicated that NBA basketball had indeed begun to change. But around the time San Antonio were lifting the Larry O'Brien Trophy in 2014, the real game changer was just coming over the horizon. When Steph Curry entered the league in 2009, his performances on the biggest stage in college had already proved that he was an elite level shooter, but there was concern that his skinny frame and relative lack of size at his position might limit his ability to transfer that skill to the NBA. Well, that concern was wrong. The extra space created by spread offenses, combined with the fact that Curry had seemingly unlimited range, meant that Golden State could create not so much defensive gaps, but more like chasms. With defenders having to follow him pretty much all the way back to the halfway line, running a spread pick and roll became a monumental task to try and defend on a playing surface the size of an NBA floor. Added to this was the fact that Curry was just as dangerous without the ball in his hands as he was with it, and was just as unselfish at passing if he wasn't open as he was ready to let it fly when he was. So the dominoes that would fall after that first pick and roll action meant defenders had to try and close spaces that were not only very big, but also continually being warped and manipulated by constant ball and player movement. And on top of that, not only did the Warriors have another of the best shooters of all time on the same team, Klay Thompson, to stretch defenses even further, they also had a key element in Draymond Green, whose versatility and ability as an all-time great defensive player meant he could operate as a small ball center in what became known as Golden State's death lineup, presumably because it was pretty much death for all the opponents who tried to face it, and where he was also extremely effective and perhaps somewhat underappreciated was the fact that he was an absolute master of the short roll. With defenders having to follow Curry all the way up to half court, when Draymond received the ball, he would be around the three-point line rather than the foul line, leaving him unprecedented space to exploit the gaps in the defense and spray the ball around using his elite passing vision. Add to this mix a coach in former Suns general manager and Spurs player Steve Kerr and former Sun Leandro Barbosa, the consequence was a rapid elevation to best team in the league and a championship. Then, after breaking the record for regular season wins, but not finishing it off with the title, perhaps by their own doing, replacing Harrison Barnes with Kevin Durant took them to a whole new, and to be honest, probably a little bit unfair level. And by the time this version of the Warriors run came to an end, the NBA landscape now looked completely different to the era when Mike D'Antoni first translated his European education to the American professional basketball world. Pace and space was the new reality, and franchises across the league had begun to build rosters that reflected this new style of play, with up-and-coming homegrown prospects developing their individual games to correspond with this more skill-based, free-moving, and consequently high-scoring version of basketball. It also saw a greater influx of players from around the world, which was a departure from the old, judgmental belief that European players' softness and lack of athleticism were detrimental to NBA teams, and was replaced by a less cynical understanding that their cultivation in tactical basketball could be a real advantage in a more wide-open and less physically grinding league. Now, while nothing stays the same forever, and no doubt we will see basketball evolve again as time moves on, not least with some of the potential prospects we're already seeing come down the pipeline at the time of this recording, but at least in the generation since the worldwide spark of the original Dream Team, where we also happen to have gained the ability to communicate our ideas, viewpoints and philosophies instantly around the planet, it is safe to say that basketball has truly become a global game. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like, and if you're feeling generous, maybe follow us on the socials. Until next time,
I say church, priest, tabernacle.
Whoa! Good Lord! Woo! Y'all hear this?